the desk.
So there's 5. Will the clerk, everyone has the amendment, everyone has the Crockett amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please report the amendment?
An amendment to the rules of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform for the 119th Congress is offered by Ms. Crockett of Texas.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes to explain her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During the 118th Congress, Oversight Republicans disbanded one of the most important subcommittees in Congress, the Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. And now in the 119th Congress, the chairman and House Republicans have decided to prioritize the demands of the real president, Elon Musk, and his billionaire friends over the needs of the American people. Now, we are about to approach the birthday of Martin Luther King. It's actually tomorrow. And on January 20th will be the inauguration of Donald Trump, but it will also be the observation of MLK Day. And the fact that we have decided that in this country we are not going to honor civil rights should be something that we all take issue with. Considering the fact, for some that don't know what civil rights are about, because some people only believe that it deals with black folk, let me explain. Civil and political rights are a class of rights that protect individuals' freedom from the infringement by governments, social organizations, and private individuals. They ensure one's entitlement to participate in the civil and political life of society and the state. Defined another way, the right to be free from discrimination, the freedom to worship as we choose, the right to vote for our elected representatives, the protections of due process, the right to privacy. If any of that sounds familiar, it is because these are rights that are born out of our Constitution, something that we all supposedly have sworn an oath to, and we swear to not only, we don't just swear to it, we are supposed to protect those rights. Interestingly enough, we just had the funeral of one of our beloved presidents. And I caught a flight to Austin on the day of the funeral. And I had the honor of sitting next to someone who was a little familiar with the White House. That person was Lucy Baines Johnson. And when I tell you that she is a wealth of information, I really mean that. And when we had an opportunity to talk about what she experienced as her father was president during a time in which, honestly, our country was on fire, and I would argue that, unfortunately, our country is on fire right now. When I first ran for office, I ran for the State House and said that we were in the midst of a modern-day civil rights movement, and I have not been convinced otherwise just yet. But this is the daughter of the president that signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. She was also there when he signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And to be perfectly honest, without that voting rights, I don't believe that I actually would have a seat in Congress. And so I do believe in preserving the fact that everyone should be entitled to real and true representation, because I do have a Section 2 seat as our Voting Rights Act has been decimated. But one of the stories that she told me was that her father asked her about coming over to the Congress for the signing of the bill as it relates to the Voting Rights Act. Now, for her, it was a bit inconvenient as an 18-year-old to have to leave the White House and go over to Congress. And she asked her father, why should we go over to the Congress, Daddy, to sign this particular bill? And she said, we need to go over to the Congress because we need to pay due respect to those members of Congress that knew that voting for this bill meant that they would not be returning to Congress, but they had the courage to do what was right for this country and make sure that everyone's voices were going to be heard. The one thing that we could do, the very small thing that we could do, is have a little bit of courage and decide that we are going to reinstitute this particular subcommittee, because unfortunately, I don't see the type of courage that the people that served back in the 60s had coming out of some of our colleagues. And so I'm asking you to do the courageous thing today and just institute a subcommittee that would make sure that we are looking out for those protections of everyone in this country to make sure that we have real freedom, something that we all supposedly espouse to believe in. And with that, I will yield.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Any member seek recognition?
Yes.
Mr. Higgins? Oh, Ms. Mace was first. I'm sorry. Ms. Mace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I don't know what's going on today. I find it extremely rich and offensive. So we're talking about civil rights. I'm the former ranking member on the Civil Rights Subcommittee, something I believe in civil rights and civil liberties of all Americans. And we were talking about infringement of individual people. Also, quote, the right to privacy of individuals. Coming from a party that can't define what a woman is and won't give women the right to privacy. You all want men with penises, chicks with dicks, in the bathroom with us. You want women to be forced to undress in front of men in the locker room and in dressing rooms. And it's so hypocritical for you to sit here and say and be, screaming from the rooftops about the right to privacy and civil rights when you don't respect women. And you don't respect women who've been raped, women who are victims of sexual abuse. And you want me, a victim of rape, a survivor of rape, to go into a locker room and be forced to undress in front of a man? You have to be effing kidding me. So I don't want to hear about you talk about rights, individual rights, civil rights, because you can't find the courage from the 60s to fight for women all around America, fight for women like me, every single woman. And as a rape survivor, I shouldn't have to explain to you why women have rights and why women, when we're in the bathroom, when we're in the locker room, when we're in a dressing room, why I don't feel safe when there is a man nearby. And the fact that we're going here and we're going to say all these things is the ripeness of hypocrisy on the Hill. People need to tell the truth. And if we're going to talk about the rights of individuals, we have to talk about it. Everybody has rights, including women. And at some point, men are infringing on the rights of women. We just had it today. We just had a vote about protecting women and girls in sports. And I believe it wasn't one, it was two people from the Democrat Party who voted to protect women's rights in sports today. Two. So this is, Mr. Chairman, this is a deeply offensive conversation to me today. We want to talk about real freedom. Women have freedom in this country. Women have the freedom to go to a private women's only space and not see a man in it. Women have the right to change and not be feared that somebody with their sexual perversion, someone who's confused about their gender, we have the right to feel safe in these spaces. We have the right to know that we're not going to have trans people filming us in the bathroom. How many of these trannies are taking selfies, these men are taking selfies in women's spaces, in the bathroom? It's gross, it's disgusting. So if we're going to talk about civil rights, let's talk about the rights of women in this country and how you are stripping them away every single day. And you're doing it in your legislation, you're doing it in your messaging, you're doing it on X. You're making women feel unsafe in this country. And you're making the opportunity for women and girls to be raped, to be sexually abused in this country even greater than they've ever been. So don't come over here with your attitude and talk to me about rights when you're trying to take my rights as a woman, a rape survivor, away. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Any member seek recognition? Ms. Stansberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the gentlelady across the aisle demonstrating why we need civil rights. We need civil rights to protect all people, especially trans Americans who are under attack right now. I would like to yield the rest of my time to the gentlelady who is carrying the amendment.
I don't even know how we got there because I tried to make it clear how many civil rights, it doesn't just boil down to one conversation, but I can see that somebody's campaign coffers really are struggling right now. So she gonna keep saying trans, trans, trans so that people will feel threatened. And child, listen, I want y'all
I
to
am
tell
no
me whether or
child. Do
not
not call me a child. I am no child.
I want
Don't
to
even
find
start.
out
I am a grown
which
woman.
of those
I am 47 years
emails
old. I have broken
actually
more
have.
glass ceilings than you
Chairman,
ever
I
Order,
am
please.
reclaiming my
Let's go.
time.
You will not do that. I
Order.
am not a
Chairman,
child.
I am
not a
reclaiming
child.
my time.
If you want to take it outside, we
Mr.
can
Chairman,
do
the
that.
committee is not
Okay,
in
all
order.
right. Order.
Point of order. Point of order.
Order. Chair recognizes Ms. Crockett.
No, point of order, Mr. Chairman.
State your point.
Is it allowed in the rules for a member to incite violence against another member? I mean, she said she wants to take it outside with.
Hey, I have the
Crockett.
First Amendment right too,
And
young
so
man. I have the
I'd like
First
those
Amendment
words
right.
to be
I'm not
taken
gonna be a
down.
child.
I
I'm
am
not gonna
moving
be
to have
called a
those
child
words
by
taken
any
down.
of
I
you.
believe it's against the rules to
Going
incite
outside doesn't
violence
incite
against
violence. You
another
can have a
member of
conversation
Congress.
that isn't
The committee will
interrupting this
suspend,
committee.
the member will state the words he wishes taken down.
Where she said that we can take it outside, which is direct violation against the rules, inciting violence against another member.
What rule? What rule? Cite the rule.
How does that incite violence?
Mr. Chairman, there are, if I might point out, Mr. Chairman, there are decorum rules in the House of Representatives.
And the two parliamentarians are discussing this right now. We'll suspend for a second.
Before we do that, sir.
I'm looking. All right. The chair's going to make a rule. What the gentlelady said was, we can take this outside if you want. And
Okay, so-
that could mean you could go outside and have a cup of coffee or perhaps a beer or, I mean, we have
Seriously,
Mr.
lots of
Chairman?
conversations outside.
Mr.
So I'm going to rule that it was, just
that it's okay.
that it's okay.
All right, and then point of inquiry.
I do?
I
And
have a
remember,
question.
this is a slippery slope you're going down, because we have
Oh, you're
disagreements
going
in
down
this
the
committee,
slippery
as you
slope.
know.
So just to be clear, in this committee, we can ask, we can
Apparently.
threaten violence on someone as long as
No,
at
that's
the end-
not-
excuse me.
I did
long
not
as at
threaten
the end-
violence.
Excuse
I
me,
threatened no
excuse me.
violence.
There was
I
no
threatened no
violence.
violence.
There was no violence.
long
no
as
violence.
at the
Don't
end-
create a
I
false
threatened
ask
no
a question
violence.
that
None.
was
I-
over
none.
another
You're
person.
making shit up as
It's
you
good
go
to know.
along. You
Good
might
to
want
know.
to figure this one out.
Order. There was no
Mr.
I thought you were
Chairman.
cursing today.
No violence.
Mr. Chairman,
No violence.
I'm going to appeal the ruling of the chair.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm gonna
Mr. Chairman, I have
appeal the ruling
a
of the
point of
chair.
inquiry.
State
And I
your
apologize
point.
because I had a meeting and came right down. Is it true that Ms. Mace was belittled by being called a child? Is that against our rules?
I would have to look up the rules. I don't know that it's
I'd like to
specifically in
appeal
the
the
rules. We
ruling.
asked for
Well,
proper decorum.
can we strike
asked
it
for
then?
everybody
I'd like to
get
have
along.
it stricken.
Okay. Now,
I'd
there's
have Ms. Crockett's word stricken then.
there's a motion. You have a motion, Mr. Frost?
I move to appeal the ruling of the chair.
There's a motion to appeal the ruling of the chair. Chair recognizes Mr.
And then
Gosar.
there's
I move
also a
to table.
motion to strike words, Mr. Chairman.
I move to table, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion.
Motion to take down words, sorry.
There's a motion to table. The motion is not debatable okay, the motion is not debatable. All those in favor of, what's the motion? Okay. We're going to vote on the motion to table by Mr. Gosar, to table Mr. Frost's appeal. So the motion is not debatable. As all in favor of Mr. Gosar's motion to table Mr. Frost's amendment or motion, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the
Mr.
ayes
Chair, I
have
ask for a
it.
recorded vote.
The motion is agreed to. A recorded vote is ordered. The clerk will call the roll. We have to do that right now. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan. Mr. Turner. Mr. Gosar. Mr. Gosar votes yes. Ms. Fox. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Grothman votes yes. Mr. Cloud. Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer votes aye. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins votes aye. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions votes aye. Mr. Biggs. Miss Mace. Miss Mace votes aye. Mr. Fallon. Mr. Fallon votes aye. Mr. Donalds. Mr. Donalds votes yes. Mr. Perry. Mr. Timmons. Mr. Timmons votes aye. Mr. Burchett. Mr. Burchett votes aye. Miss Greene. Miss Greene votes aye. Miss Boebert. Miss Boebert votes aye. Miss Luna. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy votes aye. Mr. Burleson. Mr. Burleson votes aye. Mr. Crane. Mr. Crane votes aye. Mr. Jack.
Aye.
Mr. Jack votes aye. Mr. McGuire. Mr. McGuire votes aye. Mr. Gill. Mr. Connolly.
Nay.
Mr. Connolly votes nay. Ms. Norton.
No.
Ms. Norton votes no. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch votes no. Mr. Krishnamurthy. Mr. Krishnamurthy votes no. Mr. Khanna. Mr. Mfume.
No.
Mr. Mfume votes no. Ms. Brown.
No.
Ms. Brown votes no. Ms. Stansbury.
No.
Ms. Stansbury votes no. Mr. Garcia.
No.
Mr. Garcia votes no. Mr. Frost.
No.
Mr. Frost votes no. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Kassar. Ms. Crockett.
No.
Ms. Crockett votes no. Ms. Randall.
No.
Ms. Randall votes no. Mr. Subramanian.
No.
Mr. Subramanian votes no. Ms. Ansari. Ms. Ansari votes no. Mr. Bell.
No.
Mr. Bell votes no. Ms. Simon.
No.
Ms. Simon votes no. Mr. Min. Mr. Min votes no. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman votes yes.
Has Mr. Cloud voted?
Mr. Cloud is not recorded. Mr. Cloud votes yes.
Has Mr. Biggs been recorded?
Mr. Biggs is not recorded.
You? Okay.
I vote aye.
Mr. Biggs votes aye.
Mr. Turner,
Has Mr. Turner been recorded?
Mr. Turner is not recorded.
I vote aye.
Mr. Turner votes aye.
Has Dr. Fox been recorded?
Ms. Fox is not recorded. Ms. Fox votes aye.
Have you, any other member wish to be recorded? Would the clerk report the tally?
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 22, the nays are 17.
The motion to table passes. Now, we will go back to debate, and I believe it was Ms. Crockett with 2 minutes and 57 seconds remaining.
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Mr.
motion.
Chair, I actually had more time than that, but
Mr. Chairman, I have
I
a
can
quick
finish
motion.
up in the 2:40.
Chairman, I have a quick, Mr. Chairman, I have a
We'll
quick,
give you 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick motion.
Oh, wait a minute, Chair recognize Mr. Donalds.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move to structured debate for 15 minutes on Ms. Crockett's amendment.
Motion and second to structure debate for 15 minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No.
No.
Motion passes to limit debate to 15 minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'd ask for a recorded vote.
Really? All right, the clerk will the clerk will call the roll on Mr. Donald's motion to limit debate to 15 minutes to each.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman. Are we in the middle of debating this motion?
I don't believe it's debatable, is it? It is debatable. It's debatable. Yeah, the motion debate is already passed. I apologize. So now we're on the vote to, the clerk's calling the vote,
Right,
So-
the recorded vote.
recorded vote
Thank you.
on Mr. Donald's motion to limit debate to 15 minutes.
Mr. Jordan. Mr. Turner. Mr. Turner votes aye. Mr. Gosar. Mr. Gosar votes aye. Ms. Fox. Ms. Fox votes aye. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Grothman votes aye. Mr. Cloud. Mr. Cloud votes aye. Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer votes aye. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins votes aye. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions votes aye. Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs votes aye. Ms. Mace. Ms. Mace votes aye. Mr. Fallon. Mr. Fallon votes aye. Mr. Donalds. Mr. Donalds votes aye. Mr. Perry. Mr. Timmons. Mr. Timmons votes aye. Mr. Burchett. Mr. Burchett votes aye. Ms. Greene. Ms. Greene votes aye. Ms. Boebert. Ms. Luna. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy votes aye. Mr. Burleson. Mr. Burleson votes aye. Mr. Crane. Mr. Crane votes aye. Mr. Jack.
Aye.
Mr. Jack votes aye. Mr. McGuire.
Aye.
Mr. McGuire votes aye. Mr. Gill. Mr. Connolly.
No.
Mr. Connolly votes no. Ms. Norton.
No.
Ms. Norton votes no. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch votes no. Mr. Krishnamurthy. Mr. Krishnamurthy votes no. Mr. Khanna. Mr. Mfume.
No.
Mr. Mfume votes no. Ms. Brown.
No.
Ms. Brown votes no. Ms. Stansbury. Ms. Stansbury votes no. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes no. Mr. Frost.
No.
Mr. Frost votes no. Ms. Lee. Mr. Kassar. Ms. Crockett.
No.
Ms. Crockett votes no. Ms. Randall.
No.
Ms. Randall votes no. Mr. Subramanian.
No.
Mr. Subramanian votes no. Ms. Ansari.
No.
Ms. Ansari votes no. Mr. Bell.
No.
Mr. Bell votes no. Ms. Simon.
No.
Ms. Simon votes no. Mr. Min. Mr. Min votes no. Mr. Chairman.
Chairman votes yes.
Mr. Chairman votes yes.
How has Ms. Boebert been recorded?
Ms. Boebert is not recorded.
Yes.
Ms. Boebert votes aye.
And has Mr. Perry been recorded?
Mr. Perry is not recorded.
Mr. Perry votes aye.
Mr. Perry votes aye.
Any other members seek recognition to vote? All right. The clerk will report the vote tally.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 23, the nays are 16.
All right. The motion passes for Mr. Donalds to limit debate to 15 minutes. Ms. Crockett will get her remaining 4 minutes, and then each side will have 7.5 additional minutes if necessary. So the chair recognizes Ms. Crockett for the remainder of her 4 minutes that don't count towards the limit to debate. Then from there on, if there's further requests for debate, there'll be 7.5 minutes each time. Chair recognizes Ms. Crockett for her remaining 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The final points that I was going to make is while this amendment has to do with civil rights, for whatever reason, the colleague on the other side of the aisle decided to attack Democrats and pretend as if we do not look out for women. And I want to be clear that it's Democrats that were pushing for the Equal Rights Amendment, and I don't recall any Republicans supporting us having the Equal Rights Amendment. I also want to make it clear that just because someone fantasizes or wants to be dramatic about the idea of someone could be a quote unquote man in a locker room or in a bathroom. I've yet to hear an actual testimony of someone who, for whatever reason, has experienced this in real time. But I can tell you some real numbers and some real facts, because I don't like to live in fantasy when I'm talking about how I'm going to govern for the American people. The facts are, in my state alone, in the state of Texas, once they decided that they were going to overturn the Roe decision, 26,000 women then ended up raped. 26,000 is what we had reported. And that was only within about a year's time span. And when they reported those rapes, none of them seemed to have anything to do with trans folk. And I don't recall any legislation to help out those women in Texas and beyond that are actually dying. We're not projecting may die, but are actually dying or have died in southern states that have decided that they wanted to go after our reproductive freedom. So as a woman in this country, as a Texan, and as a Black woman who, when we look at the numbers, and I believe in data and science, and I know that that escapes a lot of people in this chamber, but the numbers are clear that specifically Black women have always struggled when it came down to the maternal mortality rates in general. The fact that somebody who looks like me, no matter how much money they have, because I can remind you of a very wealthy tennis star that almost lost her life while trying to give birth. Some things I honestly just don't think should be partisan, and frankly, I do believe in privacy, because honestly, I don't want none of y'all making decisions if I ever end up pregnant and have to decide what it takes for me to save my life. And I give the same opportunity for other women in this country to make decisions as they see fit. So while we look at how we protect women completely differently, I can tell you that at least in the 766,000 women or 766,000 constituents that I represent, I've had them come to me concerned about whether or not they could survive childbirth. But I have not had a single person in my district tell me that they were concerned that they may be raped by a trans person. So if there is an issue to solve in this country based on facts, data, and statistics, I think that we need to look at the type of health care that we are going to advance for women in this country. And with that, I will yield.
All right, gentlelady yields back. We're going to now go into the 15-minute cap. Chair recognizes Mr. Higgins from Louisiana for 3.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the 3.5 minutes, especially given the fact it takes me about 30 minutes to deliver a 5-minute speech. I'm sure the other side's quite delighted that we're limited in time. So to my brothers and sisters on both sides of the aisle, I'm going to have the gavel of the Federal Law Enforcement Subcommittee, and I would encourage you to participate, because it's a subcommittee that's going to respond to the needs of our time. And respectful of the good lady's comments regarding civil rights, liberties, and freedoms, this is a page that we happen to agree upon, ma'am. We have sworn a mutual oath. I swore oath as a police officer long ago, as an Army veteran, long before that, as a military police officer. And that oath does not expire. We have an obligation to address the weaponization of our government against the American people that we have indeed witnessed. And in nowhere is it more frightening than when the weaponization of government is actually our federal law enforcement. So since November the 5th, Mr. Chairman, your rank and file federal law enforcement professionals have been celebrating, because they know that their beloved agency or department has been corrupted from within at the highest levels by oppressors of individual rights, liberties, and freedoms. Your rank and file guys, they want to enforce the law, uphold the Constitution, defend individual rights, liberties, and freedoms. Meanwhile, the elitist executives, the oppressors who have rooted their agenda deep within the highest levels of federal law enforcement, they're packing their desks right now. But those men and women will appear before my subcommittee, Mr. Chairman. We will have our time with those men. And we're not just pulling a curtain back, we're ripping it from the rod. We're going to reveal the oppressive nature of federal law enforcement at its highest levels that we have experienced. And I will yield the balance of my time to the chairman. I believe the ranking member would like some time.
Gentleman will yield back. Chair now recognizes ranking member for however much time he wants. So you've got 7.5 minutes on your side.
I thank the chair. Well, this is a circuitous route to an amendment that would, I would remind my colleagues, reestablish the Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. Why would we do that? Because almost nothing matches the importance of guaranteeing civil rights and civil liberties as a member of Congress than ensuring the expansion of and protection of fundamental rights, including voting rights. We have seen suppressive activity all over America, whether it comes to women's reproductive rights or the fundamental right to cast a ballot and have it counted. Ballot boxes have been suppressed. Voting times have been restricted. This is America. And if this committee can contribute anything to America, it is the preservation of the sacred right of franchise guaranteed in the 14th Amendment. It took 100 years from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and the adoption of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act in 1964 and 1965, respectively. And by the way, a higher percentage of Republicans voted for each than Democrats at that time. We had bipartisan consensus. We understood that we had been bankrupt in meeting that moral obligation, and it was time to correct the record back in 1964 and 65. Having this subcommittee anchors us in that fundamental commitment that ought to transcend our politics. I support the amendment to reestablish the subcommittee as something very fundamental to the function, role, and dedication of this committee, the Government Operations and Accountability Committee, and I support the adoption of the amendment. I reserve the balance of our time.
You all have 5 minutes and 20 seconds left. We have 3.5. I'm going to recognize the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. Greene.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we talk about civil rights, we should talk about the rights of over 63 million unborn people that were slaughtered in the womb by what Democrats call reproductive rights. Your reproductive rights are murder. And when you want to talk about which form of murder do you want to use against an unborn innocent person who should have the right to life, we should go into all of those nasty, disgusting methods. Whether these innocent people are ripped limb from limb, and they're washed in saline and murdered in the womb, or are their heads crushed before they are pulled out of their mother's cervix and womb. Let's talk about those rights. And let's talk about rape. Yeah, let's talk about it. A former student convicted of sexually assaulting 2 girls released by Loudoun County judge. You know, you were talking about stats and data.
There is information, if you just take a minute to go look it up on your cell phone that you're looking at right now, you can look up a biological male student that was mentally ill and dressed up like a girl and went in the girls' high school bathroom and sexually assaulted two young women in their school. Yeah, it happens all the time. And when you talk about civil rights, let's talk about women's rights in sports. A male swimmer competed on the men's team for 3 years before winning the women's NCAA Division I championship in the 500-yard freestyle event. This same man was nominated NCAA Woman of the Year. That is a big violation of women's rights. After playing on a college men's team 30 years prior, a 52-year-old 6'6" man joined a women's junior college basketball team and destroyed them on the court. Oh, wow. I thought you cared about rights, civil rights, women's rights. A male runner was named Women's Athlete of the Week after competing in an NCAA Division I women's cross-country meet. One male athlete won first place in the women's mile race at an NCAA Division I conference championship. And a 17-year-old female volleyball player was left partially paralyzed with brain damage after a ball was spiked at her by her biological male opponent. The team rightfully forfeited the remainder of the games played against that school out of safety concerns. Why don't you care about these women's rights? If you want to preach about civil rights, civil liberties, and protecting people's rights, you should be standing up and protecting women and girls' rights in sports. And keep your biological men who are mentally insane and have sexually perversive ideas, thoughts, and fantasies out of our bathrooms, out of our sports, out of our women's spaces. And if you want to continue to be the party that stands up for that absolute insane bullshit, we'll keep beating you election after election after election. You want to know why? Because y'all are for they, them, and we're for the American people. And we actually do stand up for people's rights. We stand up for the unborn, we stand up for women and children, and we will protect them from the deranged lunatics that you all call women. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
All right, gentlelady yields back. That's going to wrap up our time. You all have, what did I say, 4.5 minutes? Is that what, does anyone seek recognition, or are we going to go straight to votes? All right. The motion now is on the Crockett amendment. All those in favor of Ms. Crockett's amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Crockett.
I'd ask for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is ordered as previously announced. Further proceedings on the question will be postponed. So pursuant to the previous order, the committee stands in recess for 10 minutes while we prepare the electronic voting system. Good news, we think we've got it fixed. So 10 minutes, don't run off very far. 10 minutes, we're coming back, and we're going to vote electronically. It should be quick. So the committee stands in recess.
What is happening now? Recess. They're setting up the voting.